My name is Evelyn Hart, and for most of my life my world has revolved around one person. My son, Daniel. When his father James died in a construction accident, Daniel was barely 3. I remember the day with painful clarity. A knock at the door, a folded uniform cap, and a silence that swallowed everything. I was 25, holding a child too young to understand why his father wasn't coming home. From that day, survival became a routine, not a choice. I waited tables at a diner by day, stitched torn uniforms by night, and learned to fix pipes, unclog drains, and build toy planes because my boy needed both parents. Daniel grew up knowing hard work as love's language. When he graduated with honors in engineering, he hugged me and whispered, "I'll make it up to you. Mom, I promise." For a while I believed him. Then came Clara, the woman who spoke with rehearsed sweetness and never looked anyone in the eye unless she wanted something. She worked in marketing, sharp, articulate, always performing. Daniel was mesmerized. To him, she was confidence personified. To me, she was calculation dressed as charm. I tried to like her. I really did. But there were warning signs. The way she corrected him mid-sentence, how she referred to my home as quaint, how she always positioned herself between us, physically and emotionally. When Daniel proposed, I saw hesitation in his smile, subtle, fleeting, but I saw it. Clara's mother, Margaret, arrived soon after the engagement. She carried herself like a woman accustomed to being obeyed. Polished pearls, a condescending tone, and that peculiar smile, tight, precise, and never reaching her eyes. From the moment we met, she spoke as if Daniel already belonged to her family. "You must be so proud of our boy," she said, her manicured hand resting on his arm. The word "our" echoed long after the conversation ended. As wedding plans took shape, I found myself erased by degrees. Invitations went out with my name misspelled. The florist stopped calling for confirmation. When I offered to help with seating arrangements, Clara smiled politely. "Oh, don't worry, Mom," she said, voice dripping with charm. "My mom has everything under control." I didn't argue. I watched. I waited. Still, a part of me clung to hope that on the day he said "I do," Daniel would look for me in the crowd, that his eyes would find mine and remember where he came from. But the morning I opened social media and saw the wedding photos, a ceremony that had already happened. Days earlier, hope turned into something colder, sharper. There was Daniel, radiant in his navy suit. And beside him, walking him down the aisle, was Margaret, not me. The caption read, "A perfect union surrounded by family." I stared at the empty seat meant for me and realized, for the first time, I had been written out of my own son's story. At first, I told myself it had to be a mistake. Perhaps they'd held a small rehearsal, a symbolic walk before the real ceremony. But as the images multiplied online, professional photographs, tagged guests, glowing comments, it became impossible to lie to myself. The wedding had already happened. Without me, I sat in silence, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound in my kitchen. The screen glowed with my son's happiness, yet every pixel seemed to cut deeper. There was Margaret beside him, her hand looped through his arm as though she'd earned that right. Her smile was triumphant, almost proprietary. I called Daniel that night. Once, twice, then a third time. Each attempt went to voicemail. The next morning, a short text arrived. "Mom, please don't take this personally. It was a small family event. Clara's parents wanted to keep it intimate. We'll celebrate with you later. The word felt like a dismissal. Days passed. Friends reached out, unaware of the situation. "You must be so proud," they said. I smiled through gritted teeth, offered vague answers, and closed my curtains. At night, I replayed his childhood in my head. The laughter, the scraped knees, the late-night talks about his father. Where had that boy gone? Then one evening, while sorting old mail, I noticed something odd. A wedding program addressed to Daniel had been forwarded to me by mistake. Inside, the list of acknowledgments read, "Special thanks to Margaret and Richard Palmer for their love and support." There was no mention of me. Not even my name. I folded the paper slowly, feeling a strange calm settle in. I had been erased deliberately, not forgotten. And that realization changed everything. I began to notice patterns in Clara's words. Fragments of memory I had dismissed earlier. How she once mentioned Daniel's company promotion with uncanny confidence before it became public. How Margaret always seemed to know details about his finances that even I didn't. The two women had woven themselves into every aspect of his life, thread by thread until there was no space left for me. But grief, when sharpened by betrayal, becomes clarity. I stopped weeping. I started watching. I made phone calls, asked quiet questions, pieced together fragments others had overlooked. It wasn't long before I saw the picture forming. A pattern of control masked as care. They hadn't just taken my place at a ceremony. They were trying to take possession of him entirely. His name, his future, even his memories. That night, I opened the drawer where I kept James's old tools. The scent of cedar and metal filled the air, grounding me in something real. My fingers brushed against the smooth handle of his engraving knife, the one he used to craft keepsakes when times were hard. For the first time in years, I knew exactly what I needed to do, and this time, I wouldn't ask for permission. The next morning, I woke with a strange stillness inside me, like the air before a storm. Grief had transformed into something quieter, colder, and infinitely sharper. Purpose. If Margaret and Clara had rewritten the story, I would simply hand them the truth they'd ignored. Not with anger, not with noise, just proof, undeniable and silent. I started with what I already knew. Daniel's coworker Aaron still lived in town. When I called him, his voice dropped to a whisper. I tried warning him, Mrs. Hart. They got to him fast. Margaret's been talking to his boss for months, offering business referrals, favors. It's how he got promoted. My pulse quickened. And Clara? She's worse, he said bitterly. She controls his bank accounts. Says it's for budgeting, but she's been transferring money to her mother's company. I thanked him and hung up, my hands trembling, not from fear, but from fury held too long. Every piece of information painted the same picture. Manipulation disguised as devotion. Daniel hadn't just been distanced from me. He'd been systematically isolated. I spent the next few days collecting proof, emails forwarded discreetly by a friend in his office, screenshots sent by acquaintances, even an overheard conversation between Margaret and Clara at a bridal boutique where an old coworker happened to be shopping. Each clue confirmed what I already sensed. They wanted control of his finances, his home, his identity. When my folder was full, I printed everything and labeled it with his initials, DH. Then I opened the drawer with James's engraving tools. The faint scent of sawdust and oil filled the room. For a moment, I imagined his steady hands guiding mine, just as he once had when we carved Daniel's first toy box. This one would be smaller, a polished wooden box, carved with James's initials, JH. It felt right that the truth should come from both of us, the parents who had built Daniel's life from nothing. Inside, I placed a letter. Daniel, love can blind us. Trust can be twisted by those who use it for their gain. You were raised on honesty. Don't let deceit wear love's mask. Look closely, not with your heart, but with your conscience. The truth won't destroy you. It will free you. Mom, beside it I set a flash drive with every document, message, and photo. Then I wrapped the box in gold paper and addressed it to Daniel and Clara, with love. As the courier drove away, I stood by the window and exhaled. I felt neither vindicated nor afraid, only steady, certain. The box carried more than evidence. It carried everything I hadn't been able to say. Now the truth would speak for itself. And when it did, I knew the silence that followed would finally belong to me. It was nearly midnight when the silence shattered. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, the screen flashing Daniel's name. For a heartbeat, I hesitated. Then I answered. His voice trembled. Mom, what did you do? I didn't respond right away. I could hear chaos in the background, muffled voices, someone crying. The dull echo of music abruptly stopped. I sent you a gift, I said softly. She screamed, Mom! Clara opened it in front of everyone. His breath hitched. She thought it was jewelry. She plugged the flash drive into the venue projector to show a surprise message from you. Then, he stopped, swallowing hard. Everything started playing. The photos, the emails, the recordings of her and her mother. People just stared. I closed my eyes. I could almost see it. The lights dimming, the laughter fading into stunned silence, the truth blooming like fire across the room. "What did you see, Daniel?" I asked quietly. His voice broke. "I saw them, talking about me like I was property, about the promotion, the money, the house, how they planned to move you out of my life completely." There was a long pause, and then a choked whisper. "You knew all along, didn't you?" "Yes," I said, "but you wouldn't have believed me. You loved them too much to see it." The line went silent except for the sound of his breathing, uneven, disbelieving. Then, in a voice stripped bare, he said, "I'm so sorry, Mom." When he arrived at my door hours later, he looked smaller somehow, like the boy I'd once carried through storms and sleepless nights. His suit jacket was wrinkled, his eyes red. Without a word, he stepped inside and broke down in my arms. "I thought you were jealous," he whispered. "I thought you didn't want me to be happy." "I only wanted you to be safe," I said. Sometimes love means staying quiet until someone's ready to hear the truth. He stayed the night, sitting at the kitchen table where I used to help him with homework. For the first time in years, we didn't speak about the past or the pain. We just sat there, letting the quiet mend what words couldn't. By dawn, his decision was made. The marriage ended quickly after that. Clara and her mother tried to salvage their reputations, but truth, once exposed, has a way of echoing louder than lies. Weeks later, Daniel found the box on my shelf, the twin to the one I'd sent. He traced his father's initials and smiled faintly. "You always find a way to speak without shouting," he said. I looked at him then, older, humbled, but freer than he'd ever been. "Silence," I told him, "isn't weakness. Sometimes it's how love protects itself." He nodded, and for the first time in a long while, I saw James in his eyes. Months have passed since that night, yet the echoes of it still linger in quiet corners of my home. The faint hum of Daniel's laughter in the kitchen, the soft scrape of his chair on the tiled floor, the peace that replaced the ache. He's rebuilding now, slowly. He sold the house he once shared with Clara, left the job his mother-in-law helped him secure, and started fresh in a smaller apartment overlooking the river. Every Sunday he visits me with a bag of groceries and that same shy smile he wore as a boy bringing me daisies from the garden. Sometimes we talk about James, how steady his hands were, how his laughter filled every room. Daniel always grows quiet then. I know he's thinking about the wooden box, about how truth, once revealed, can both shatter and heal. Clara and her mother disappeared from our lives as swiftly as they had entered. I never sought revenge or validation. The truth took care of both. Word spread quickly about the scandal that unfolded at the wedding. Margaret's business suffered, and Clara's name became a whisper people avoided. But I felt no triumph, only a deep, cleansing stillness. It wasn't victory I'd wanted. It was closure. Daniel once asked me if I regretted it. "If you could go back," he said quietly, "would you still send the box?" I thought about that for a long moment before answering. "Yes," I said finally, "because lies rot in silence, and sometimes the only way to save someone you love is to let the truth cut deep enough to wake them." He nodded, his eyes shining with something softer than pain, understanding. That's when I realized he no longer carried guilt, only gratitude, the kind that grows from being seen, even when it hurts. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Daniel handed me something, a new wooden box, crafted by his own hands. The initials carved into it were mine. E.H. inside lay a folded note. "For the woman who taught me that love isn't blind, it's brave." I ran my fingers over the smooth surface, feeling warmth bloom where grief had once lived. Life, I've learned, doesn't always grant justice in grand gestures. Sometimes, it's as quiet as forgiveness whispered in the dark, or a son choosing to come home after being lost. Now, When I sit by the window in the evenings, I no longer wait for calls that never come. I listen to the wind rustling through the trees and think of silence, not as emptiness, but as peace earned. Love built on truth, I realize, doesn't collapse. It endures, and sometimes the loudest act of love a mother can make is to say nothing at all.